This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight are Richard Hawes.
Hello, everyone.
And Stephen Lockeridge.
Hello.
And later on in the show, we will have a special guest, Rick Ives, who is the writer, director, and editor of the heist film Solid Rock Trust. But this week, we were looking at Nicolas Cage in The Old Way. Then we have Aubrey Plaza in Emily the Criminal. Then we have a nice little horror film, The Harbinger. Our short shot is Dream War. And our DTV Throwback is You Might Be the Killer. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film then is The Old Way. Colton Briggs was once a notorious gunslinging, sharpshooting enforcer for a land baron until things went south for his boss and he moved on and settled down. Now, 20 years later, Colton's past catches up with him with devastating consequences, forcing him to head on a road of vengeance with his young daughter. This has been touted as the first Western to star Nicolas Cage as Colton Briggs. I really like this. It sort of touches on various sort of genre tropes. But it's well shot. It's got decent production values, some decent action from times, and some good acting. I did enjoy this. Steve, what did you make of The Old Way?
Yep, enjoyed it. I don't think quite as much as you, but it's got the old revenge Western tropes in there. Old gunslinger, now turned family man. It's an old Western John Wick in a way, really.
I must admit, I was kind of waiting for him to sort of take a sledgehammer to the concrete floor or something, and dig out his old guns or something like that. But no, that doesn't quite happen. Yeah.
The dog being the dog.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. I mean, I think Cage puts in a decent performance. He's not over the top. It's a very subdued performance, and even his daughter as well. I mean, I don't know. To me, it was like kind of it seemed to me like they were trying to say she was kind of on the spectrum, in a way. And obviously, in that time, didn't really know what it was and everything like that, which I thought was quite interesting. Because it's not something that they normally show back in, in the Wild West. I thought that was a decent spin on it, and even the bad guys weren't too over the top. It was nice to see Clint Howard in there. I've not seen him for a while, and even the main baddie. I thought he played it really well as well. Quite menacing, and overall pretty decent. I thought he was nicely shot. The action scenes were quite. Again, it wasn't too overly edited. It was like it would have been. Not over rushed or anything like that. So all in all, pretty decent.
Yeah, I really did like this one. Rich, your take on The Old Way?
I'm afraid I didn't get a chance to see this one, but I am intrigued to see that. I was looking at the cast list that Clint Howard's in this movie.
Yep.
So does he have a big role, small role? What's he doing?
Yeah, he's one of the sort of the main four bad guys, isn't he? And he plays this. He wears like an old Confederate cap. So obviously, he fought for the South during the Civil Wars kind of thing. But yeah, he's pretty decent in this. Sort of an old curmudgeon sort of character. We've also got Abraham Ben Ruby. Again, as Big Mike, he's got a similarly large role in this. As sort of one, one of these henchmen. He's really good. You know, he's got a really imposing presence in this one.
Yeah, he was in Christmas Bloody Christmas was the last time we were talking about him. Yeah, so good to see him turning up again in something. Obviously I didn't get a chance to watch the movie, but like, nice to see his name popping up. And yeah, he's still, you know, getting these quite interesting roles. But yeah, so Nicolas Cage, is it a proper leading role for him, or is it like a sneaky, you know, kind of teaser kind of thing? Or
no, he's definitely front and center.
Okay.
And there's, you know, there's some nice sort of juxtaposition with his character, because when we first see him, he's got this handlebar moustache, you know, in the past, and he's supposed to be this henchman for this guy, but he you know, they're about to hang this guy for supposedly robbing the Baron, the land Baron guy, and you know, they know that this guy's brother's going to be trying something. They're like, watch out for trouble, sort of thing. And he literally just sits there, doesn't he? He just stands there and lets it all happen, and then, you know, takes his moment. Yeah, so he just sort of, you know, he just picks his moment, sort of thing. But that turns out to be a you know, a turning point both for him and for other characters. And you know, he goes his separate ways, and then he settles down, and he does sort of settle down properly. You know, he gets a job. He runs a hardware store or something in town. You know, he's got a young daughter. He's got a wife, and he's all happy. Yeah, you know, happy to have put his past behind him. But of course, you know, unfortunately, it catches up with him, and it sort of sends him down this other path. And it, you know, there's this moment which reminded me of Lone Wolf and Cub, basically, the sort of samurai thing. In that film, in the first one, you know, he lets his son choose whether or not he's going to live or die. Basically, he's saying, well, you know, you can either have the shiny ball, in which case I'll kill you and you can stay with your mum, who's also dead, or if you grab the sword, that means, you know, you're coming with me. And there's a kind of a similar moment to that in the film where you know, he's trying to decide which way to sort of, you know, whether or not he should sort of take his daughter with him or not. But yeah, there's another interesting thing which only sort of comes to light at the end, where he keeps looking at his watch. You know, it keeps taking out his watch and sort of looking, you're thinking, okay, he wants another time. But, you know, it does have sort of a different sort of significance at the end, which I thought was quite good as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this was a solid little film. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, good old Nicolas Cage in a Western for once. How are you going to score it, Steve?
I'll give it a 7.
I think it's a very solid 7, definitely. Yeah, this is definitely worth checking out. If you're a fan of Westerns or a fan of Nicolas Cage, or just a decent sort of genre film. 2 7s for The Old Way. Go check it out. Our next review is Emily the Criminal. Emily is a young woman down on her luck and working dead-end jobs while her college friends travel the world. When she agrees to take part in a credit card scam, it sets her down a dark and dangerous path from which there may be no return. I didn't know whether or not I was going to enjoy this, I must admit, because it came across as, in the synopsis, it was going to be more of a drama. And I'm not a fan of dramas very much. You know, but I'm glad that there was sort of some proper sort of genre elements to this. And Aubrey Plaza is great in the central role in this. So I did enjoy this overall. Steve?
Yeah, I was a bit wondering what to expect, because normally, I mean, the work I'm familiar with Aubrey Plaza is more the comedy side, you know, like Parks and Rec and stuff like that, and The Little Hours, that kind of thing. But this is more of a pared down, you know, naturalistic performance. And, you know, the thing is, it's that little misdemeanor she had in the past keeps catching up with her, you know, and so it's like, is the forgiveness in the world? Not really, no, because that's what sends her down on the path to do this, you know, and there's quite a lot of tension built up there, and I've really enjoyed Theo Rossi. I've liked him since I saw him in, I think it was Luke Cage, wasn't it, the first thing I saw him in. And he keeps popping up now and again. I'm really enjoying him. And it loses its way a little bit in the third act, I think. You know, it goes a little bit, not haywire, but just that stretches credibility just a little bit in the third act. But apart from that, yeah, it's decent enough.
Rich?
Yeah, I was surprised that this is, you know, DTV, and because it's such a quality movie. I think that I just, even looking at the poster and stuff, like, you know, I'd heard buzz about it and everything, and I was really surprised. And I've checked and double checked to see whether it had any kind of cinema release, and as far as I can tell, it didn't, which does surprise me. But the yeah, I can see what you're saying, Mike, about feeling like it was going to be a more of a drama. I did too. You know, it's a film that played Sundance, that kind of thing. But then you get these action beats sort of kicking in and stuff. It's and it turns more into a thriller, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was, you know, really well. It was as good as I kind of expected it to be in terms of its production quality and performances and the cinematography and everything. It's, you know, a film made to a very high standard. I think it's trying to set up a justification for the heroine's actions, and then I think it's perhaps a bit too encouraging, I guess, of this. In you know, it's kind of like yeah, I get the point. Kind of the opening scene kind of makes a point of the, you know, how there's this there was this event in the past that she can't move on to, and it kind of, the film keeps coming back to this kind of, she's trying to go straight, you know, she's trying to do the right thing, but then, you know, somebody will say something mean or whatever, and then she just goes off and does these things, and it kind of seems to justify it, and not just her, but like the other characters as well. And so you can get on board with that to a certain extent, and it's, you know, it's fine. And I kind of went with it, but I did feel at times that it was justifying her too much. There's usually more of a she gets in too deep sort of comeuppance kind of, you know, it catches up with her to an extent kind of stuff. Yeah. But not to the degree you might normally expect with this kind of story. Yeah, so again, I'd not seen Theo Rossi before, and I was really taken with his performance as the you know, the guy sort of sets her on this path. You know, you're not really sure of his motivations, and then he does seem quite genuine in his sort of interest and affection for her, and they develop quite a good relationship.
He's very sort of charismatic, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I mean, I like the start. The start has got a guy credited as office manager. It's John Billingsley, I don't know his name, but he's one of those character actors who I recognized his voice straight away, and I was like, I know that guy's voice and stuff. And so I enjoyed sort of him turning up briefly, but the most of the cast are unknown to me. I'd say Aubrey Plaza I was not even really familiar with. I'd heard the name, but I don't think I've ever seen her in anything that I can recall, or at least nothing that she had a particularly main role in. So yeah, she's got a really good performance here. You know, sort of very how would you put it? Sort of like an honest, sort of raw kind of performance. You know, sort of good interesting character that she gets to play here. I would definitely recommend it. I think it's really good. I mean, you only have to watch the trailer to see all the sort of accolades that people have sort of heaped upon it, of saying how good it is, and I do think it lives up to it.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be too much sort of social commentary kind of thing, but you know, other than, you know, a few moments about her position, you know, I think it is more of a sort of straightforward thriller. You know, that they use those elements to give her motivation for getting in the situation she does. But other than that, it's, you know, it doesn't sort of hit you over the head with it too much, I don't think.
No, was she in the Child's Play remake?
I believe she was.
So I was just looking up. I just looking up, and it looks like she was. Oh, and she was in King Knight as Pinecone. She's got some funny little bits she's done, but yeah, I hadn't noticed it before. She's also in the next Jason Statham film, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. Yeah. She's going to be in that. So yeah, I think she's done loads of stuff. I mean, she seems quite well. Ingrid Goes West, I think did quite well. That was quite a noted indie movie from a year or two ago. But yeah, so this was the first time I'd seen her, and I'd say I really liked her in it. But the whole package, I thought, from a writer-director, was it John Patton Ford? Sorry, yeah, the sort of writer-director. Yeah, again, somebody else whose work I'm not familiar with. Interested to see what they've done before and what they might be doing next and stuff. So yeah, I definitely rate this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, Steve, how are you going to rate it?
I give it a 7.
And Rich?
I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give it an 8, I think. So 2 8s and a 7 for Emily the Criminal. Go check it out. Our next review is The Harbinger. In the middle of the first COVID-19 lockdown, a young woman called Monique travels into the city to help a former college friend who is suffering nightmares from which she can't awaken, and sometimes they last for days. It's not long before Monique is also experiencing something similar, and the pair trying to discover what is behind their dreams. I saw this one last year at the Mayhem Film Festival. It was very impressive. Still really enjoyed it this time around as well. It's we were talking earlier about a film, Rick Ives film, that was filmed sort of during lockdown, but we haven't really sort of seen too many films that are about the lockdown sort of thing, and I think this film does sort of capture that sort of element of sort of trepidation and fear, and also denial that was going on at the time, especially in America. I think they handle that side of it quite well. I also like the actual threat involved in this one, and its sort of very insidious nature of what it actually does. Overall, I really like this. Steve, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it up until, say, like the third act, the last 20 minutes, and it kind of lost me at that point. I thought the setup was great, and I really did like the fact that it was set during the pandemic and stuck to the, people trying to stick to the rules and stuff like that, and how people basically lived during that time. A story like this, you normally get someone who knows, who tells them what's happening and blah, 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 comes around like a priest or something. And even that, is like a Zoom meeting. Yeah. Which worked, I thought was really well done. And then it just gets a little bit confusing and a little bit too much the last 20 minutes. And then kind of peters out. And then you get the ending, which you kind of expect what's coming. But I thought the performance was really good. I thought it was really well shot. Even the baddie as such or whatever, he's done really, really well. Just the last 20 minutes, I just thought it lost me on them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But there is a really interesting twist, which I don't want to sort of go into when people discover, but I was really impressed with it in because it added this extra layer to what was going on, and to the to what this creature actually does to somebody. It's not just that they kill you, it goes further than that. Which was really interesting, and it leads to certain discoveries in the story, and you think, oh my god, that's really interesting. Rich, your thoughts on The Harbinger?
I'm going to echo a couple of things you've said there. I think going back to what you were talking about, that being that it's set during the pandemic and whatever, that's the really striking thing when you first start it. I mean, exactly what you're saying. We haven't seen, or I know there have been certain films, but I haven't watched many of the sort of pandemic set movies that have been released so far. But this one, it's it's so shocking when you watch it. It doesn't seem real. I mean, it's a really accurate representation of what was going on, and it just feels bizarre. It's just like that was, you know, just get that flashback of what what was like life was like a couple of years ago, and so that's really striking and creates kind of a weird feeling, really, because you know it's something that seems so movie-like, so strange, and yet was a real thing that actually was experienced. So I think it captures that really well. The plot line is I thought quite interesting, but again, I'm sort of leaning over, sort of echoing what Steve was saying in terms of it got quite confusing at the end. Now I think I knew what was going on, but I had to, given in my circumstances, I had to kind of watch this piecemeal, and there was distractions and stuff. So I don't think that helped with trying to follow where some of the things, so like characters disappear and, you know, characters end up in completely different locations and stuff. And I think I did get it, and that, but I think I understood the sort of conclusion, but it did kind of, it was. I think you need to sort of be sort of on your A game when you're watching it. But I'd say I thought it was really good. It's another it's a new film from Andy Mitten, writer director, who did The Witch in the Window, which we covered quite a time ago, back in 2018. That was made. That was his last film, which we really enjoyed. Another film that was quite small scale, just as this is, you know, very small cast, very limited kind of environments and action. Another horror film, and I thought the cast in that were really good. Also interesting in the way that it's another film that's a black cast led film, but it's not a film that in any way sort of leans on that sort of idea. It's a natural kind of environment.
It's a protagonist who just happens to be black.
Exactly, which is exactly as it should be. And I think that's what's good. We're seeing a lot more films that are I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't know the ethnicity of Andy Mitten, but it's really good to see films that are not just focusing on white characters, you know, and if they are doing black characters, then they're making them sort of really cliched or something. I think this is telling a real story about, you know, really identifiable people regardless of race, and I thought that was what was another thing that was really interesting about it, as well as the ideas and stuff that it was conveying about the Harbinger and what was going on there.
And talking about sort of identifiable and sort of engaging characters, you know, we got Monique and her brother and her dad sort of living together, you know, at the beginning, and you know, Monique and her brother have, you know, tell this story about the hot dogs, which I thought was brilliant. You know, it's a brilliant bit of writing that they did, because it felt so like a natural sort of story. You know, oh yeah, didn't we tell you about the hot dog story? You know, it's that sort of thing. And I was smiling, I had a big grin on my face as they were sort of telling that and how it ended up. I could actually picture it, you know. But I thought that was really good, really, really well handled. That. Cool. Okay. On that note, guys, how are we going to score it, Steve?
I'll give it a 6.
And Rich?
I'm going to go 6 as well.
I'm sticking with a 7 on this one. I thought this was very enjoyable. I've got the benefit of having already seen it and not being distracted, so I could follow the that third act a bit better, I guess. But yeah, this is very good. You know, it is pretty original. It doesn't sort of you know, I suppose really you could sort of say, oh, you know, a bit of Nightmare on Elm Street. It could just because dreams are involved, but I think it handles it really well, and it does have some very original and scary ideas. So there you go. That's 2 6s and a 7 for The Harbinger. Go check it out. Okay, we are joined by Rick Ives, the writer, director, and editor. Let me know if I've missed out any of your roles on this film, Rick.
I also cleaned the toilets on the set, so it's pretty much everything.
A film called Solid Rock Trust. I keep calling it Red Rock West, which is an old Nicolas Cage film. But Yes, this is a film that me and Will reviewed last year, and it was in my top 10. I thought really highly of this. I'm just going to run through the synopsis. I will point out as well, this is available on Amazon Prime in the UK to rent. But IMDb has this saying, armed with only a collection of cell phones and a unique talent, a hacker orchestrates an elaborate bank heist within an abandoned building. But when things spin out of control, she has her wits to hold it all together. You've got a great actress holding this film together, Coco Marshall. I'm interested to know what your casting call sheet actually asked for. I'm imagining it was something like able to switch accents at a drop of a hat.
Yeah, so truthfully, we were going to shoot this before COVID all hit and out in Los Angeles, and we had started the casting process already. And then everything went down, as you know. We ended up postponing it. At some point, we decided, I live out in Atlanta now. I moved out here 5 or 6 years ago. And we decided, why don't we just do it out here? We're kind of still, just creeping back into getting back to work, and it's starting to be safe to open up film sets again. And we decided, if there was ever a COVID movie, this is the one. There's no reason we can't do this. I mean, we got a 1-person cast and a tiny crew at one location. So why not? We ended up calling her back off of a video casting that we'd done and talked about the script with her. But you're right. I was looking for someone who could do accents, and I asked her, can you cry? And are you okay being, by yourself on set for the entirety of the shoot? And I feel still really lucky that we found Coco. We were on, it was like, 95 degrees in that room. Sorry, you'll have to do the Celsius conversion for me. But
yeah, so that's about 30 degrees, something like that. Yeah.
And asking an actress to, basically work by herself and not play off of anybody and have so much dialogue, memorized, and she never did anything without a smile, and she was happy to be there, and it was just so fun. So we're glad that we found her.
Because I'm not kidding about the accents, because you have some quite long takes in this, and she's on multiple phone conversations, and part of the setup is that she's developed a different persona for everyone she's working with. Some think she's Australian or English, or somebody thinks she's French, and she's literally having to switch accents all the time. I mean, it's part of her character is that she almost gets caught out at one point when she forgets which accent she's meant to be in. But it is really impressive that she's able to keep going and just sort of go French accent, English accent, Australian accent.
And what's funny is I had less accents in the script than she brought. At some point she was like, hey, could I change this one into this one instead? And I said, yeah, by all means. If you could do it. She speaks like 3 languages fluently, and then has a whole, she probably has more accents we didn't even get into. But we would hit record and say action and let her go for like 7-8 pages at a time, and she would just do it flawlessly. It's wild.
You mentioned that this was conceived pre-COVID. So the was the concept always to have the focus on one person in the room, everyone else via voice, as it were?
Yeah, it was. Originally I had written this as a short that I could shoot for really cheap, like in an apartment or something, and I was just thinking, man, what could I do in one room that would be really interesting? Well, what if they had a whole bunch of cell phones? Okay, if they had a bunch of phones, what would they be doing? Why would they need that? And I always loved bank heists, so I just kind of merged those ideas together. The problem was I could never get the short under like 27 pages. And everyone will tell you your short should be 5 to 7 minutes, not 20 pages, not 25 pages. Yeah, so I just extended it into the feature because there was just so much in there that I wanted to have. I wanted to have backstabbings and double crosses and surprises, but you can't really get that unless you have time to set it up. So
yeah, I think also if you want any hope of getting your film into a short film into like a competition or festival, then you have to have it at least at the most 20 minutes, I think. So
right, exactly. Yeah. And then you think, man, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 days shooting a short. and never really hope to have a return on whatever I spend. But for almost the same price, you could double your length and have a feature that you could hope to sell. So that's what we did. We shot in 11 days, so it wasn't that long compared to a short. So it seemed to make sense.
There's an interesting sequence in the middle of this where you do sort of break things up. So there are a couple of visitors who turn up to the warehouse and sort of add more problems to sort of Coco's situation. Was that a deliberate thing as well? You know, was it like just an opportunity to sort of change the pace of the film?
Yeah, definitely. I knew it would be a tough sell to anyone to just say there's really one person by themselves for 90 minutes. So we had to change that up a little bit. You guys also went into a little bit of, you know, when you were talking about our show or our movie, kind of layering on the problems, and she has so many things that she has to solve, and none of them, she doesn't have time to solve any of them. You know what I mean? And it just seemed to make sense to bring one more thing in at a crucial moment, you know, when there's a big turn in what's going on in the bank and someone, you know, finds out some information, and that's the moment she really needs to be there but can't be. You know? So that was the goal there.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, got anything you want to jump in with at the moment?
Now, Rich and Steve hadn't seen it before last week, right?
Yeah, we watched it this week. So,
by the way, I didn't know that we were going to be one of your faves for the year until last week when you did that. So we had set this up before. I'm not here just because of that, but I'm interested if Rich and Steve have something to say about it too.
I mean, to be fair, if I'd have seen it at that point, I probably, it would be in the top 10 last year. But yeah, it's just, I'm amazed at Coco's performance. I thought she was absolutely phenomenal. Really good. I mean, when you say she's on set on her own, you know, with the phone calls and stuff, I presume it was all ADR, but was there someone on set doing that with her, or?
So that's kind of a fun story. I went through a lot of ideas of how we were going to do that. You don't really want to just have someone on set who's not an actor reading lines. You know what I mean? Because you lose the performance. They're looking for a return of some kind to work with. And I didn't want to figure out schedules for getting all these people there for all that time also, you know, because you switch back and forth so much, it didn't make sense. So what we ended up doing was recording pretty much the whole movie on Zoom, just like we're doing right now, ahead of time. So for 2 weeks, I just did one-on-ones with Coco and whatever other part there was. And we would just go through the script one scene at a time with everything that they were involved in. And really, I would call action, and we'd do 3 or 4 takes over Zoom. And I had sent microphones to everyone's houses. So they just pushed record and they sent it all to me. And then I ended up editing before we ever started shooting. I edited all those conversations down. So it would have the actor line and then a space for her line, and then the actor line and then a space for her line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was exactly what they had performed. So it wasn't like I was lying to her about this is how much time I think you should have. It was really how much time, you know, had been spent. And we just pushed play on all those recordings on the day. And she knew it so well. I had put all those recordings on her iPod ahead of time, so she was just listening to them and rehearsing by herself with the whole script.
It's interesting. There's a great scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino's film, when Leonardo DiCaprio's character is doing exactly that. You know, he's recorded all the other characters' lines on a tape, and he's just listening to it and you know, rehearsing you know, his bits, which was quite fascinating. So
the real way to do this would be have those actors, you know, in the wings, have actual phone calls going. I think that's how they did Locke, actually. So there's different ways to do it. It just depends, you know, I guess the setup that you have and the budget you have.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned Locke. There have been 1 or 2 other films where we've had like one actor on stage and having to react to other people. I think the difference for me in this one is that those people were in very confined spaces,
Right, they couldn't even move.
Yeah, exactly. So stuck in a car, or the Ryan Reynolds one where he's stuck in a box buried under the ground, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
So this one, you're able to add more sort of visual dynamic to that story by allowing the camera to move around, allowing your character to move around as well. There's one particular moment in the film where something happens in the bank. It's sort of quite shocking to sort of Coco's character, and you're able to sort of just draw the camera away from her, so she's just sort of just isolated in the thing, which you wouldn't be able to do in any of those other stories.
Right. The funny thing is they did do that in Buried, even though he was in a coffin. They're kind of cheating a little bit by pulling the camera outside of where it was physically able to be. But yeah, and I can't remember if you guys talked about this when you reviewed it the first time, but part of what I told my director of photography I wanted to do was start really wide and slow. Mm-hmm. So we were on wide angles, wide lenses and farther away from her. And slowly, we're pushing in until you get to late in the second act when you're right here in her eyes and her mouth, her ears, right in her face, almost like the setting kind of dissolves away and it becomes less and less important, because what's really important is what she's going through and the stakes for her and her team,
Yeah, absolutely. We get some nice sort of backstory for her as well, sort of explaining her sort of motivation. Which is very interesting. I mean, is that the way sort of lotteries are set up in the States? I mean, it's like, yeah, you want all this money, but we're not giving it to you all at once, sort of thing.
Well, that's actually a decision you can make. So you're allowed to take, I don't know how it is for you guys, but for us, if you win something like that, you can either take a cash payout, which is a percentage, or you could take monthly payouts until it runs out. The idea being, we wouldn't actually pay you for example, 10 years from now, and in 10 years, that's what you would be winning. But if you're going to take it right now, adjusted for inflation, that's only this much. So I don't know if they actually keep that much cash on hand. That's a law. That's kind of fudged a little bit for our story, but I mean, I guess that's how it worked.
Yeah. Rich, anything from you at this point?
No, I just want to echo what Steve was saying about and Mike, how impressive that opening is when she's moving between those different characters that she's created to liaise with these people, and how impressive that performance is right off the bat. That really hooks you in,
right?
And then the sort of really interesting sort of setup, and what she's telling them, and then what parts of that are the truth. You're just not quite sure. Even when she's saying something that seems like it might be a legitimate explanation, you're still not sure. Is that still another trick that she's trying to play them with? It's great. I've never seen her in anything before, and I'll definitely be. I've already started trying to find out, some of the other work that she's done. You're as well. Also, it's quite an assured debut from yourself. As far as I can tell, you've not directed a feature before, although you have an extensive career in the film industry. This is a project that I guess was. You say you started developing it before COVID. It's something you've been wanting to do for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I've written this quite a while ago, and I had been editing low budget features for a couple of guys out in California who I still work with. They had been churning out stuff, along this line, this level of budget and this kind of story and stuff. And I thought, man, I'd like to be a part of that. And we were talking, Mike and I, a little bit before the show, is I watch a lot of these like micro budget feature movies. I love them. Eventually you're like, I could do this. There's no reason I can't. If they can do it, I can do it. So I wanted to give that a shot. So it was sort of, I guess, a bucket list item. And if there's more, then great. If we never make another one, at least I, got that one out of my system.
Sorry if I missed it, because I might have missed it when you say over. How long was the journey between actually producing and completing the film to actually getting the sort of international distribution that you've managed to achieve?
I wrote the short back when I was in college. So 10 years, even longer ago. I had approached my production company, who I was editing for, about doing it in 2019, I think. We ended up shooting it in 2021, and then we released it in 2022. So
that's
kind of
quick,
strange. People ask how long did it take, and I'm like, well, technically 10 or 15 years, but really like 2 years. I don't usually take that long to write scripts these days. It gets easier and easier, but that's just the way the first one worked out, I guess.
And is it in terms of, obviously we've got it, it's available in the US and over here in the UK. How many other sort of territories at the moment are you aware of that it's
that's a good question. Indie Rights, our distributor, takes care of all that stuff, so I don't even really keep up. I know in the United States, if you're listening, it's available for free on Tubi, and like you guys said, it's on Amazon Prime for rental. It's on YouTube Movies for rental. It's the other one, Google Movies. You can rent, and it'll be on YouTube streaming for free. I think in June is when they have a release date for that. And then they're always looking for more places, so it will appear on more platforms. But if you look, maybe in your show notes, you could we've got a link tree that keeps updated with where it's available to watch.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to talk about props for a minute. It is probably the one thing. I think there was two things we flagged when we were watching it. One is the only time the budget really sort of shows through is when sort of the police turn up in what looks like sort of paintball gear, basically.
Yeah.
Which is fine, I mean, it is a low budget film at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, the low budget stuff always, I feel like, tries to do more than they're capable of doing, and I'm maybe guilty of the same thing. But at least I was going for, look, I know this isn't going to look completely real. Let's try to shoot it in a way that it's sort of, a suggestion of what's happening instead of full on, police shootout like you would like to see.
I must admit, it did sort of pass me by, but the trouble is, my friend Will, who did the review, he is actually a policeman. So it sort of like, he was quick to notice. The only other thing, and I'm trying to skirt around it as much as I can because I don't want to give away spoilers. But there's a reveal at the end, and it kind of needs Keiko's character to kind of go against her character in order for it to work. So somebody turns up and she's like, "Oh my God, you're alive," sort of thing, and it's like, really at that point she should be sort of put 2 and 2 together. Right. But the only way it works is if she sort of goes, in the moment she's going, "Oh my God,"
Right. And I think at that point you do definitely have enough information to figure out, what's going on. My hope was that at least if you're there right at that moment, we're also going to reveal that, within 30 seconds. So
it doesn't take long for it. For
right. So good on you for being there and like paying attention and also watching my movie long enough to get that far.
Having said that, she was prepared for something.
Right. The original script, the short, was called Plan C, because the idea was that she always had a backup plan, and she had backups for the backups and backups for the backups for the backups. And there is another shot, if you notice, in the movie, she opens the desk at one point to pull out some binoculars, and you see another phone in there that says Plan C on it. Yeah. So I do try to drop in some hints, like she really doesn't trust anyone. She always is trying to have a way out. And, that was the whole theme for me for the movie, was she doesn't trust anyone. This is her fatal flaw, is if only she had, maybe it wouldn't have gone this way. But
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, she's so well prepared, like you say, there's plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And she covers herself in glory because it does come to fruition that things go wrong, and it's bound to do.
Right.
Because, with her not being on the ground as such, there's always that.
It goes Reservoir Dogs, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's always that risk of something not going exactly to plan.
Yeah, it's Michael Madsen kicking off, basically.
Right. There's a scene in one of the newer Planet of the Apes movies. You guys have seen those, I'm sure, where everything's going wrong and Caesar is in the back of a car, and I think he got shot or something, and he's just there so angry and, huffing and puffing, but there's literally nothing he can do. And I remember that moment stuck out to me as, man, how powerless. And that was sort of the goal of Her too, was you may feel like you're in control, but at some point there's only so much you can do from far away. And what happens when you lose control? What is there for you other than to just sit there and listen at sometimes,
Yeah.
How heartbreaking that can be.
Just want to sort of touch on your other that sounds horrible. Just want to sort of touch on
where you touching, Mike? Come on.
I know, where am I touching? The rest of your sort of filmography. As we were chatting before, I did mention that it can't help but notice the fact that you've been involved with a lot of Marvel's output over the last few years, either on TV or sort of on their sort of features. First of all, how did you get that gig? Because I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes way back, is that I've always wanted to work in filmmaking, whatever it was. When I was in college, I felt drawn to post-production, so I sort of made that my focus at the time. I landed my first job right out of college, working for James Cameron's 3D company. So that was actually the day Avatar came out is when I started there.
Yeah.
And if you remember at the time, 3D kind of took off. And it was his practical 3D camera rigs that were kind of behind all that. And for a period of 2 or 3 years, we were doing all the 3D dailies for, every big 3D release.
That's interesting. I mean, I've never thought of this before, but I mean, he's developed these new cameras for filming 3D and to make it relatively affordable for a lot of companies to be doing it. But does that then mean you need specialized equipment to do the editing as well? Is this sort of the backroom stuff having to be sort of redesigned on top of it?
Yeah, well, by the way, I could talk about 3D all day if you guys want to, so stop me whenever you're bored. But the thing was, at the time, they had the patent for the 3D camera rig that they used, and it works just like your eyeballs do, right? So you're capturing one left, one right. And that was before all the cameras were digital like they are today, like Reds and Alexas. And they were actually shooting to tape. So the problem, though, is you have twice as much media because you're shooting 2 cameras at all times. And then if you have 3 camera angles, you're looking at six different cameras that are actually shooting and all that media. And there had to be a way to get all that video footage into Avid so the regular editors could edit it, looking at it in 3D. So yeah, it's like hard, really. And you think maybe adding a camera doubles the workload, and actually it's more like times 3. Nowadays it's a little different because they'll just shoot it 2D and then post convert it.
Right.
Or in the case of, Avatar or like Pixar stuff, it's all digitally rendered anyway. So that's not that much more work because they're just slapping another digital camera onto it. Yeah, it's kind of wild the way that it all went. And these days, I think you're hard pressed to find something that's actually shot in 3D outside of maybe Ang Lee's movies. But anyways, from there, I, started to meet some people. And at some point, I decided I didn't really want to work on set anymore or do dailies anymore. So I made the jump over to, actually, I got hired at Pinewood Studios in Atlanta. I don't know if you knew there was one out here.
No.
When they were expanding. So I was working for Pinewood Studios doing dailies. That's when I kind of broke into the Marvel stuff because they were doing Infinity War and Endgame. That was a year-long shoot. And after that, Pinewood made some changes. They closed our department in Atlanta, and I made the jump over to editorial, which is where, I started doing the Disney Plus shows as an assistant editor. And, Marvel just does so much work, especially in Georgia. I mean, Georgia and London is where a lot of it is, and it just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. And at this point, I'm pretty confident that there's another one as soon as my job ends, so I can jump on the next. But it's fun. I'm a huge Marvel fan anyways, so I was watching that stuff before I was ever working on it, and I still pinch myself every day when it gets boring. I'm like, yeah, but look what I'm doing. People would kill for this job.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, we're old enough to remember what it used to be like, when Marvel was sort of selling off things like The Punisher,
Yeah, totally.
With Dolph Lundgren and
yeah, I remember those too.
What was the other one?
Thomas Jane, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Thomas. Yeah, all that.
Captain America was the main one. Everyone.
The Albert Pyun one.
Oh, God,
From the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Good old Albert Pyun.
There was a Spider-Man one too around that time, right?
Yeah.
Well, they were trying to. They never quite got it off the ground. But
there was a series in the late 70s, early 80s.
Did you guys watch She-Hulk?
Yeah.
How did you like the? Oh, you didn't. Oh, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. There's a really great opening sequence that you would like if you watch the old Lou Ferrigno Hulk show.
All right, I need to catch it. I'm way behind on Disney stuff at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, love it or hate
so much
it,
stuff to try and watch, isn't there?
There is. Yeah, it's tough, and they're part of the problem, if you would call it that. But love it or hate it, they do what they do really well. I mean, you always know what you're going to get, and it's not going to be bad. It might not be the greatest thing you've ever seen, but there's going to be some laughs, and there's going to be some drama, some stakes, but it's fairly safe, and it's family friendly, and there's some fun action and visual effects. So, I mean, you know what you sign up for.
So, Rick, what's if you could go into making your next film, it's a genre movie, what genre are you going to pick?
I really would like to do a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got some scripts written between, some are 10,000, some are 2 million. It just depends on, what we can get going next.
Mm-hmm.
The idea behind Solid Rock Trust was to take a genre film and do a spin on it. So it's something you recognize and is very familiar, and yet something you've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a lot of the same tropes you would find in a bank heist and get them in there in a fresh way. At least that was the goal. And I'd like to still try to do that. So we'll take a genre that has certain things that you need to hit, but try to flip them on its head, one after another, and do something different.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Rick, we're going to wrap the interview part up there. So thanks for joining us for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for the great reviews and having me on. And man, it was just a pleasure.
Our short shot this week is Dream War. An operative dives into the subconscious dream state of his captive while his partners engage in a battle of life and death with those hell-bent on stopping them. Rich, you warned us last week that this was basically a fan film. He didn't sort of tell us which one, but even though it doesn't actually say what it is, it does become pretty clear which universe this belongs into.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the notes or the the tags or whatever for the video on YouTube, it doesn't mention it at all, and there's no message that comes up at the beginning to stress that it's fan film. So it's not intended as like a proper upfront fan film. It's just an idea the filmmaker Kevin Brill has used, and those that know will know. And Inception was such a big film that I think most people will pick up on it if they see it, and I think it's a good jumping off point, and for the short that he's made, for the action, because it's a very action-led short, but it's like about 15 minutes long, and I think he did a really good job of sort of taking that idea and working within the budget limitations that he had to tell a story within that kind of situation, within the same kind of situation.
Yeah. So Rick, I mean, you're talking about Solid Rock Trust, possibly have been being a short at one point. We cover a lot of short films, and a good percentage of them are basically fight films. A fight sequence with a little bit of story added. Mainly as a
you get like a countdown clock, or there's a bomb that's going to go off somewhere,
something like that. Yeah, we get a lot of that.
We got to save a kidnapped person.
Yeah, but I think this one, there is just enough story and just enough concept behind it to sort of build upon. What the reason I sort of asked you to sort of watch it is I was quite taken with the editing of this. Especially during the fight sequences as well, where we've got, a fight going on in one reality and a fight going on in the other, and they do a really good job of sort of juxtaposing the action between the two.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. I thought that was real fun.
Rich, what are your thoughts on this one?
I gave some thoughts as Steve had a chance to watch it.
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah,
cool.
I enjoyed this one actually. Yeah, I thought the fight sequences were done really, really well. I mean, obviously, 2 minutes in, you're thinking, okay, Inception. Not the most original shot we've seen, especially for a while, but I thought the fighting, the choreography was really good. I thought it was actually quite brutal, to be fair. Like the ball and the sock and stuff, scum coming out and everything like that. But yeah, all in all, it was pretty decent, this one, actually. Especially like the fight scene between the girl and the two.
Yes, that was
two gangsters. Yeah. It was just pretty brutal. I didn't really expect it to be that harsh, to be fair, but no, it was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, he did a Kevin Burrell, and his Brilliant Action is his company that makes these films, and he's done. They've been of variable quality. Some of them I've been really impressed by, and some of them I hadn't liked at all. There was one that he releases quite consistently. In fact, I think since this one came out a few weeks ago, he's already released another one. But there was one that came out several months ago, and I really didn't like the editing and stuff on that. It was I don't know if he was experimenting and trying some tricks and stuff on the speeds and things, but it just it didn't work. For me. It just didn't work. Whereas this one, you can see the action. It's really solid. It's really sharply shot. I've been impressed with his choreography, but it's also the filmmaking here as well. I think is really good. And yes, I would love to see him sort of develop more story in it. But he is, these are action vehicles for him and his team. That's the kind of sort of principal purpose of them.
That was going to be my question. Is these things are basically just showcases, right, for what they could do?
They're reels essentially, and they're like that.
Because I always wonder, who are these people putting these together? And a lot of times it seems like they're not quite there yet.
Yeah,
but this one I felt was a step above what I've seen as far as these kind of movies go.
Yeah, as I say, we do watch a lot of these, and some of them, are legit. I mean, there's one particular company called Art School Dropouts who do brilliant choreography, but one or two of their films have literally just been the fight and no story at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. It almost makes me think they're just cutting together a fight just to release, and that's the demo reel, but why not?
Basically.
Why not put it out there?
Yeah, well, the Marshall Club guys who ended up working with Marvel did the same thing. They established a following on YouTube doing, showcasing what they can do within a short film, sort of dressing up. They would do sort of little narratives and stuff, and then it just established what their physical capabilities were, and then they get work on Shang-Chi and Everything Everywhere at Once and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a springboard that a lot of people we notice a lot of people using, say, YouTube or Vimeo, making the short films, getting them out, not necessarily for festivals, because some films they get made and then you never see them because they're made pretty much exclusively sort of for the festival circuit.
Right.
And but others, they just get them straight out, build an audience, sort of establish their reputation and stuff. So it's interesting to see how different filmmakers are using the short films format and what their capabilities are. And I think here we're seeing another good example of what this guy and his team are capable of, and I want to see them go on and do a feature, and see what they can do within like an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half or something. See if can they sustain that? Can they develop a story that can that can use that action effectively?
That's the thing, is you point out that this one had a little bit of a story, and that's what's missing from a lot of them, right? But for me, I sometimes tune out when the action gets overly long like this. Because there are no stakes, because you don't know why it's happening. Like, I need something else. And that's what this one gave me a little bit more than the others. I felt like some reveals. I don't know if you guys go into spoilers on these short shots, but there's some twists at the end that you might not see coming. And it's fun to at least layer in a little bit of that. So you feel like there's a reason for this. It's not just kick, punch, bottle. Kick through the bottle on the head, though, was a nice touch.
That was a good one. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that before.
I think there were one or two bits which were overly sped up, at the beginning, but eventually it's sort they got into the sort of the rhythm of it a bit more. But yeah, no, it's a really good one. This we don't score the shorts, but we do recommend you check them out, and you will find a link to this in the footnotes below. Go check it out. Our next film is You Might Be the Killer. A summer camp counselor rings his best friend in a panic when he finds himself hunted by a masked killer. Or is he? This is just very enjoyable for the most part, Rich. This is currently on Shudder. Stars Fran Kranz from Cabin in the Woods, among others, and also Alison Hannigan from Buffy. A great little setup. I was worried it was going to be in media res, and I was actually willing to forgive it for once if it was, but it is more involved than that. It isn't sort of exactly that, but yeah, for the most part, this is a decent sort of good take on the whole sort of summer camp serial killer kind of trope. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I loved it. It was exactly up my street. I thought the sort of slasher movie stuff was done really well. Lots of references to Friday the 13th films in particular, but also the performances of characters and the sort of the fun sort of discussions on conventions and that of the slasher genre, which we've seen loads of other films such as Scream and that.
Yeah, I was going to say Scream constantly dines out on this sort of stuff, doesn't it?
Well, and as you mentioned before, Cabin in the Woods, basically did the same thing as well. But Fran Kranz is kind of sort of back in the sort of similar kind of environment, but here he's the lead. He's a very different kind of character to the one he played in Cabin in the Woods, which I hadn't even realised, because I only really became aware of him as an actor when we did his film. Blood-sucking bastards. Yeah, in which he was the lead. And so I actually went back to Cabin in the Woods a few days ago after seeing this and to sort of look at them in comparison. And I do think they do make a good double bill. I think this is better. I prefer this one. I think there's stuff about Cabin in the Woods that for me, I'm not that worried about. But it's actually with Cabin in the Woods, it's kind of the Office kind of stuff that I liked most in that movie, rather than the sort of the killers kind of bits, whereas this is all sort of the killers and stuff. And I like how I'll tell you the other film that came to mind when I was watching this, which I think would be a really good double bill with Final Girl or Final Girls. Sorry.
Final Girls,
yeah. See, I've not watched it, but I was thinking that, looking at the poster and stuff. I'm thinking, is it along them lines?
Yeah, I think they're very much trying to do a similar kind of thing, but very differently.
This is more gory.
Yeah. This is, and this what we end up here with is basically a horror variation of The Mask.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was surprised when you see The Mask. It is so close to it, and
even looks like it. Yeah,
the backstory and everything. You think, the way it sort of draws him in, sort of forcing him to wear it and stuff like that.
If anything, that's a weakness for the film, because it's so close to that concept of, it's like they've really basically just ripped off the concept of The Mask.
Yeah.
And matched it to a slasher movie. So that's a little, I mean, it's a good idea, but it's a little bit of it's a little bit too close to comfort.
Skirts a bit close,
Skirts a bit close to copyright and stuff, I would say. But and Alison Hannigan, great to see her. She's got the same,
bubbly
sort of
nature,
bubbly nature character that she had when she was in Buffy. She's basically the same. I didn't like her in the American Pie movies. I didn't like seeing her with that kind of character that she was playing. But here she's much more sort of Willow-like. So good to see her. But I mean, sure, she's got loads of other stuff, but I actually haven't seen her in anything for quite a while. And so, I enjoyed her. And the rest of the cast are really good. I mean, the guy playing Steve the Kayak King is absolutely is brilliant.
He was really good.
Price.
When he's instructing the kids before they go to take them canoeing. I thought that was, I thought
really good comic delivery and stuff.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of playing it sort of like, are you being serious, or are you having a joke? He's kind of deadpanning it, which is great. He's good. And then also all the others. playing the supporting characters, and the plot and the way it's non-linear and going back and forth and different perspectives and stuff. I had a lot of fun with that. I thought I didn't mind. It's because it's very humorous. There's lots of title cards and stuff.
Yeah, it's humorous up to a point, and then it suddenly turns really nasty. Which is really interesting. It's sort of, it sort of goes a bit deeper.
Well, that's the hard thing with some of the with horror and comedy. It's a really difficult thing to pull off. I think. I mean, I'd say Bloodstone Bastards did it and stuff, and I think other films, and Scream and whatever, there's different degrees where people try, and sometimes it just really doesn't work. Especially if you're leaning into the comedy as much as you're leaning into the horror. I think that was one of the things that struck me when I saw Shaun of the Dead. Is it's a very sort of bright comedy, whatever. But some of it's really gruesome. There's some really gruesome stuff in it, but it works, and it's
this as I said, it turns pretty nasty, but it does save itself with its very final scene. It's sort of. It ends, it heads really bleak, and then right at the end, it's like, oh, we're back to comedy again. It's a very, end on that note. It's like, oh, right, okay, that's an interesting way. If there's ever a sort of a sequel or something, they've got a way of doing it. But
and there's a great song at the end as well.
Yes, there is. Yeah, but that because the ending, it's brilliantly done. Because dawn's arriving, and you got these sort of very tranquil shots and things, and then the characters sort of walking away in the distance, and it's like, bloody hell, But then the very next scene is like, just before the credits, saves it, which is really really impressed with this one. Yeah, really enjoyed it. No, we don't score the throwbacks.
We don't score them, but we do recommend them.
Certainly recommend them. This one's on Shudder. So if you've got a Shudder subscription, we certainly recommend you check this one out. And it's definitely a good reason to get a subscription for films such as this. Yeah, so that is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Steve and Rich for joining us.
No problem.
Joining us. I've got a split personality now. We also had Rick Ives on the show. Please check out Slotted Rock Trust. It's on Tubi if you're in the States, or you can rent it through various platforms, including Amazon in the UK. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter and Facebook at the DTV Digest. Also check out the Short Shots, where Rich puts a short on every evening around about 8 o'clock. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.